Good evening. Hello, Mikhail. Hello, Opti. Hello, Fenris. Hello, Saxy. Hello, Q. How's the audio tonight? Is the background music loud enough? Or can you barely hear it? You like this background music? This is meant for horror because tonight, as I promised, we'll be doing horror stories where, I guess, reading the experiences of other people. How is everybody's day? Did you all eat yet? Thank you for the flower, Opti. I really appreciate it. Let me move closer, actually. So tonight, I'll be reading horror stories for all of you. So I hope you're all comfortable on your beds. I hope everyone has locked their doors for the night. Hello, Cheetah. No, it's not a new mic. I'm just talking closer to all of you. Hello, Frosty. Thank you for the flower. I truly appreciate it. I'm sorry that tonight's stream is an hour late. I'm gonna watch this upstairs where it's full of ghosts and nearly pitch black. That sounds like a good idea, Cheetah. It's always nice to surround ourselves with other elements. Anyway, yeah, Saxy, I'm sorry I was late. I was resting and I lost track of time. The stories that I'm about to read all of you tonight are pretty long, so please bear with me. These will be a first time for me. I haven't read any of these, so I guess we'll both be having the same reactions to these stories. Hello, Josh. Welcome. Good evening. Hello, Ellie. Yes, we're doing ASMR tonight, but I'll be reading ghost and horror stories to all of you. They're throwing stuff around. They must be very excited. Do I know the story of the Manananggal? Of course. Of course. My mother's province is known for Manananggals. My mother, you see, came from Capiz. I wouldn't say it's a ghost story, but more of a mythology. I wonder which is which. It has to come from somewhere. So there must be some form of truth to all of these stories. Don't you think? Well, anyway, let's get to the first story for tonight. This one is entitled Dad Shut Himself Inside His Bunker at the Start of the Pandemic, and 3 months ago, we lost contact with him. Dad shut himself inside his bunker at the beginning of 2020. He said the world was about to end, and when we didn't believe him, he told us to wake up. It was raining that day. I remember focusing on the water hitting the window panes while my sister tried to change Dad's mind. I knew it was no use. He was too stubborn to listen to anyone, except maybe Donald Trump, who had just declared that COVID had pushed the world into a pandemic. Dad wanted us to join him, and when we told him no, he called us brainwashed. He purchased the land before I was born, only because of the dilapidated military facility that came with it. It was abandoned sometime in the 60s, I think. My sister was there from the beginning, even before Dad's obsession pushed Mom away. It's hard for me to imagine what he was like back then. Mom says he was a gentleman, but they married young, and a person can change a lot during those years. And so did Dad. All I remember from him during childhood are the weekends at the bunker, constantly renovating it, stockpiling it with everything he would need to survive down there. We couldn't stop him. He wasn't the best dad, not even a good one. But it was sad to see him go all the same. He was excited, even though he thought that civilization was about to collapse. I guess that happens when you've spent your entire adult life preparing. We had to set up an old radio to keep in touch with him. He didn't trust mobile phones. We didn't hear from him often, just once a month, sometimes less. The last time he radioed in, he said he found the hidden door. He was going to see where it went. That was 3 months ago. Do you think he's okay? My sister said. He wasn't in great health. I told him. We sat in the car, on our way to check up on him, driving through the heat wave. His radio might have broken down, I said. Let's not assume the worst. But I felt worried too. There was something strange about that hidden door, and his tone when he mentioned it. It didn't seem right with me. But maybe it was just the heat and the endless desert around us that played tricks on my mind. I couldn't really tell. It was dark when we arrived. Dad's truck stood where he had left it, beneath some tarp that blew in the chilly, sand-carrying wind. We turned on our flashlights and walked to the cliff above the bunker. The steel door was made to withstand a nuclear blast. Luckily, I owned the only spare key in existence. Before I used it, I banged on the door as hard as I could and yelled for Dad. I worried he would make us for intruders and shoot us. If he was confused, and if it was dark, it was a real possibility. I banged again and yelled at the top of my lungs. Dad, are you there? It's me, Josh. Evelyn is here as well. I don't think he can hear you, Evelyn said. I nodded. Dad, I'm opening the door now. I was 17 the last time I was here. Back then, it was the Muslims that were going to end civilization as we knew it. Before that, it was the Russians. Now it was China. There was always something threatening his beloved freedom. And yet, he was never truly free. My sister put her hand on my wrist as I was about to unlock the door. You know, she said, maybe we should just call the authorities after all and... No, I said. He'll fight them. I unlocked the heavy door. A rancid smell escaped the darkness inside. It was the odor of death. I recognized it from when Dad tried, and ultimately failed, to learn how to hunt and let a reindeer carcass rot on the property for weeks. My sister had already stopped visiting him by then. I didn't tell her what the smell reminded me of. She covered her nose with her shirt. We descended the spiral stairs. It cracked, it creaked for each step we took, almost as if it was about to fall apart. I tried the light switch at the bottom. The click echoed throughout the long corridor leading into the living area. Nothing happened. I realized that the batteries, which he charged by the use of an old exercise bike, were dead. That meant he was most likely dead as well. The generator could be broken, I said. But maybe you should wait back here, just in case, you know? I pointed my flashlight in front of me. The light was too weak to reach the end of the corridor. On the way here, I had felt ready. I felt sad. The kind of empty sadness you feel after the death of a parent that was never any good. But I didn't feel worried. Now, on the other hand, while staring into the dark corridor that I used to run through as a kid, I was afraid. The fear reminded me of how my childhood night terrors used to start. They always crept up on me in the darkness, grew with the grotesque shadows on my bedroom ceiling. I'm not letting you go in there alone, Evelyn said. We stay together. We walked into the darkness. The foul smell intensified for every step we took, and so did my heartbeat. I was glad my sister didn't stay behind. The bunker seemed so much smaller than I remember it, much more cramped. The asymmetry between my memories and reality made everything feel off somehow, just as if the bunker was merely a model of the real thing. But it wasn't. I had just grown up. The Confederate flag greeted us at the end of the corridor. It hung on the concrete wall. It looked pale in the hot spot of the flashlight, almost a phantom. And of course, in many ways it was a ghost from a long time ago. Or perhaps a corpse brought it back to life. An abomination. It reminded me of Dad more than anything else. You have to be seriously confused to praise freedom as much as Dad and hang that symbol of lesser freedom in the world on your wall, Evelyn said. He wanted to protect his freedom so much that he built a prison for himself. I removed the light from the flag, leaving only darkness. You bet he was confused. We entered the main chamber. It was overfilled with litter and clutter, empty cans, both the food and beer kinds, lay scattered across the sticky floor. We had to take large steps to not step on any of the trash. That's weird. Evelyn pointed her flashlight at a small dining table. Look. My hair stood up my neck before I even realized what she meant. The table was set for 3 people. I didn't say anything for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing. And just when I was about to speak to my sister, she interrupted me. Who the fuck was here with him? We don't know, I began. I mean, he might have left the old plates on the table and... A sound of something falling to the ground came from the other rooms further into the bunker. I pointed my light in its direction but couldn't see what made it. Dad, I yelled. It's me, Josh. Are you there? There was no response. I'm afraid, Evelyn whispered. Something isn't right. I only vaguely heard what she said. My focus was on something else. Something on the wall on the other end of the room. That's not supposed to be there. I slowly walked towards it. That must have been what he talked about over the radio. Dad hacked away a layer of concrete for whatever reason, and then covered a rusty metal door behind it. It stood ajar, lukewarm. Musty breeze came out of it. My sister walked up to me as I carefully pried the door open with the back of my flashlight. I felt my heart in my throat. I could hear my sister begging for us to leave, almost in tears. But I needed to know what was behind that door. It was imperative to understand what happened here. I needed to know. I needed closure. What in heaven's name? Evelyn looked over my shoulder. Why is this here? Behind the door was a room about the size of a broom cupboard. It was unremarkable except for a circular hole in the middle of the floor. I shone my light onto it, but I couldn't see the bottom. Just as I thought it was big enough for a person, my sister said, "Do you think he fell?" Drops of sweat from my forehead fell down the pit. I felt dizzy and stepped back. I was afraid I would fall inside. My sister picked up a can filled with some rotten beans and threw it down the hole. It clattered against the walls as it bounced from one side to another. The sound faded away until we couldn't hear it anymore. There was no indication it touched down at the bottom. I stretched out my hand and held it above an opening. "It's warm," I said. "The air, I mean." Maybe he fell. Evelyn stepped back, almost as if she was convinced. "Can we please get out of here?" She reached for my arm. "Can we return with the police? Please, Josh." It wasn't dark when Dad found this, I said. He should have seen the hole. "Josh, please. Just give me a moment to think." I walked towards the hallway that led to the other rooms, desperately hoping to find him. For some reason, it was important for me to see him, to be able to leave without wondering. I needed to know that he was truly dead. I just want to... I stopped myself after I accidentally pointed the flashlight on the floor in the middle of the hallway, revealing a pair of feet. I think I found him. I ran up to the body. Wait! Evelyn yelled and reluctantly followed me, avoid being left alone. It wasn't Dad. I screamed upon the realization. My mind couldn't comprehend what I had just seen. I spun around and tried to run away, completely acting on instinct, and crashed onto my sister. She grabbed me, kept me still as she looked behind me, down at the dead body on the floor. She began to cry while her hands trembled uncontrollably against my shoulders. "Oh my God," she said. "How is it possible? It's you." "Let's get the fuck out of here," I said. "Move." There was nothing that could explain this. And the more my mind tried to, moving in an endless loop doing so, the dread grew inside me. I only got a glimpse of the body before I panicked, but my sister was right. The half-rotten face was the same as mine, with a bullet hole in the middle of the forehead. We stumbled our way through the living area, tripping over chairs and kicking cans all over the place. And just as we were about to get out of the mess, a familiar voice echoed through the hallway we had just escaped. "Josh." It was Dad. We both stopped in our tracks. "Is that you, Josh?" "Dad?" I yelled back. "What the fuck is going on here?" "Don't worry." It sounded like he was at the end of the bunker, possibly inside the storeroom. "I killed the son of a bitch. Put a bullet right between his eyes." "Come out of there," I yelled. "We have to leave. It's not safe here." There was silence. "Something is wrong," Evelyn said. "I don't think..." "Dad!" I yelled. "Come out!" "I can't move," Dad said. "I'm stuck under a shelf. I need your help, son." I turned to my sister. "Go back up. I'll get that old bastard out of here. We'll be right behind you, okay?" "Think, Josh," Evelyn begged. "You think he's been stuck under a shelf for..." I should have listened, but even after we had just seen, I just couldn't bring myself to even consider something as outlandish as what my sister was suggesting. It was simply too far-fetched, too unbelievable to penetrate all my layers of presumptions about reality. It couldn't be. It just couldn't. Hence, I ran back to the hallway, yelling for my sister to get back up off the surface and wait for us there. "I'm coming, Dad." I only slowed down to carefully step over the corpse that bore my face. Perhaps I thought it was just a coincidence, a burglar that just happened to look like me. Thank you, Tamagoki. Good night. Sweet dreams. Rest in peace. I'll greet the readers later after the story. We're almost done. And then, as I was just about to walk past the small composting toilet that stood inside a small room at the end of the hallway, I stopped. Shivers spread across my entire body, paralyzing me. Dad sat on the toilet, his gun still hung from his trigger finger, and his brain was splattered across the wall behind him. He had his journal in his lap, covered in blood. "Josh!" Dad yelled from the darkness. "Help me!" I was frozen in place, both by fear and confusion, unable to make any decisions. "Come on, Josh!" Dad kept yelling. "I need your help, son." My mind was racing. There was no way of knowing who was who. When I heard Dad's voice yelling for help while watching his dead body, nothing but absolute terror was inside of me. I slowly reached for the journal in Dad's lap and grabbed it, hoping it would shed some light on the situation. I was just about to open it when my sister screamed. I ran back, this time jumping over my doppelganger's body, and found her looking at something at the end of the corner of the main chamber. "I told you so," I said, but changed my mind. "Are you okay? What happened?" She cried. It's me! Crawled up in the corner was her naked body. She was dead. Her head had been twisted in such a way that the neck had been broken. There's something seriously wicked going on here, I said. Dad shot himself in the head a long time ago by the looks of it, and yet he keeps yelling for help. Let's get back to the car now. We drove away from the bunker as fast as we could, leaving whatever was still alive down there yelling for help. My sister insisted on staying at my place for a few days. I didn't mind having her around. We shared an experience no one else could relate to. We needed each other to overcome the trauma. It took a day for me to build up the courage to open Dad's journal. It began with his usual deranged conspiracy theories. I flipped past them. At the end, he had only made short notes. Found a hidden door. Deep pit. Possible the remains of some old black project. Evelyn and Josh woke me up. A surprise visit. Didn't hear them enter. Strange. Had dinner with them. Something seems off. It isn't them. They tried to make me. God help me. It isn't them. I shot the son of a bitch right between the eyes. Hiding in the bathroom now. This will probably be my last entry. God forgive me. Chills went down my spine as I read the last entry on the blood-drenched page. I never got the other one. She's still out there somewhere. I only got one bullet left. I won't allow her to do that abhorrent thing to me. Forgive me. My sister had been cooking for hours. She just called me from the kitchen. Josh, come here. I want to show you something. That's the end. That story was entitled Dad Shot Himself Inside His Bunker at the Start of the Pandemic. And 3 months ago, we lost contact with him. I'm sorry for my late welcome, but I wanted to finish the story for all of you. Welcome, readers. Welcome. My name is Yin. I am dead. Welcome to my grave. Feel free to stay for a while, but if you want, you can stay forever. I'd like to welcome everybody who just joined us tonight, who came from the raid and decided to stay. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for the follow, Vaughn, Marian, Pies, Phoenix, and Potato a Fish. I hope you enjoy your stay. That was our first story for tonight. I'm not gonna lie, that kind of gave me chills as I was reading it. This is an entry from 2 years ago by Odd Directions. Our second story is also quite long. Oh, thank you so much for the hydrate and posture check, Goldat. Let me do that right now. A while ago, you also wanted to be called a good boy. Well, here it is. Good boy, Goladat. Good boy. You're a good boy, Goladan. Our next story is about a mother. My mom was the sort of person to look like a wallflower until you got close, and then spout out facts about her favorite animal. It was an emperor penguin. She said their journey for love and parenthood was the hardest and most connecting with her. I told all the usual things about her. She had a smile that could light up a room. Her laugh cut through the malaise of an awkward party. Her stride was confident, and her form was elegant. From the day I could understand what it was to be remembered, she was painted to me as a true goddess. After all, aren't all moms supposed to be that to their children growing up? Mom died when I was 4. Aggressive cancer riddled her body with tumors, stole her stride, her smile, her laugh, everything in just 18 short months. I didn't see her much for it, but if I did, I obviously didn't remember. I heard somewhere we don't start forming memories until we're around 2 years old, and implicit memories, those unconscious memories that stick with us automatically, aren't even until we're 7. So essentially, my mother already dead for 3 years before I could unconsciously think of the word mom and go to her face. A face that was stolen from me. A face that I'll never see. I'm giving you this background information now because it's vital that you understand my mom before we get into the thick of it. I can't sit here and tell you I love my mom unconditionally. I didn't know her. Dad was never in the picture, so grandparents were where I was shipped off to. Good people, kind people. They raised me on stories of my mom and made sure to do the one thing she'd requested when her sickness finally got to her. Show Nick the milestone tapes. For those unaware, a milestone tape is something where a loved one, usually a parent, records a loving video to congratulate her kin on a moment they're missing out on. First day of school, marriage, you get the picture. I remember being 5 years old. Not long ago, I tripped on the stairs after miscalculating my steps and smashed my front tooth on the top step, sending my first baby tooth flying. Thankfully, the pain was short-lived in my mind. I was mere days from my birthday and a surprise trip to Disneyland was coming up. In the middle of packing, I was sat down in front of the TV with my grandpa and him putting in these pristine discs. A gaudy logo flashing up on the screen still burned into my retinas to this day. Gone but not deleted, a video message from Leonora Stankowski. The image would flicker for just a moment, always just a moment each time, then she'd appear. A young woman sat in a black leather armchair with a small table to her side and a patterned wallpaper behind her. She was in her late 20s. With her raven black hair tied in a messy bun, strands curled and dangling down her porcelain face, a beauty mark sitting just beneath her right eye, the pair of them shining like emeralds that caught the first ray of sunshine. Black lipstick gave way to shimmering teeth, and a smile that made even an oblivious little me feel lost. Hi, Pumpkin. It's Mommy. I hope my little prince is watching the throne while I'm away. How can you be nearly 6 years old and already losing your baby teeth? You're growing up too fast, little man. She puffed out her cheeks and she feigned a frown before giggling. My heart sank in my chest. I knew something wasn't right even then. Her tone was playful, buoyant, and full of joy, like she'd never missed a moment of my life. I made sure you put your tooth under your pillow tonight. Dada will make sure the tooth fairy comes and nothing else. She raised a single finger with a wink, posing for a moment before her face fell. Her posture sank, and she fell back into the armchair at had, growing smaller as she coughed. After a moment, she cleared her throat with a quiet dignity and made sure the hand she coughed into went out of the shot as she fixated on the camera with a weak smile. Mommy loves you, my little crown prince. Close your eyes and breathe with me. I looked at my grandfather with the tears streaming down his face and a bite on his lip. He put a hand on my shoulder and nodded. I did as I was told and took a long breath in. The air cold and filling my lungs, intoxicating me as I heard her words. The same words I'd come to hear at the end of every video she recorded. I'll always be with you. And so it went. For every milestone I undertook, there was an accompanying video. When I graduated middle school, when I rode my first bike, even when I broke my first bone, she had a video ready. I was around 11. When biking home from school, I collided with a speeding driver. The bastard didn't even stop as my small body careened over his windscreen, rolled over the hood, and smashed on the concrete, tearing my right arm to pieces. Passers-by said it was a freak accident. The car just appeared out of nowhere and then it vanished. But hell, what do you think hit-and-run drivers do? Speed, speed, speed. Medicated up to my eyes and sitting in the hospital, Grandpa handed me a mini DVD player and the familiar face shot up. I could never tell you in those earlier videos if these were done back to back or months apart, but Mom still looked radiant, albeit with more coughing in each iteration. Hi, Pumpkin, it's Mommy. Though, I'm sure by now you're probably cringing at the mere mention of me referring to myself that way. Oh God, do people still say cringe? It's hard to know what the world is like anymore. But moms never supposed to be cool, are they? She chuckled. A faraway look in her eye as the pit of my stomach expanded. No, I thought, tears in my eyes, gripping the sheets with my good hand. I want you to say those things. I want you to embarrass me. Well, if you're watching this, then you've broken your first bone. I hope it's a bit later in life and not when you're so upset you can't even hear me. But sweetie, this is an important life lesson that I wanted to be there for. Pain happens. It's part of our world, and everyone in it must experience it. Sometimes it's physical, like now when your body hurts so much you just want to yell and cry out. Sometimes it's emotional, which you get when someone upsets you or hurts your feelings. Something you might also feel like from seeing my face right now, which I'm so sorry for. She trailed off. The weak smile plastered across her face like the greatest lie ever told. She took a breath, and I heard the quivers in her face, both from sadness and from sickness. But, my little crown prince, while you're watching the throne, I know you'll do great things and overcome anything that stands in your way. You know why? Why? I breathed, my body radiating with hot pain, but my heart aching. I leaned in as she leaned in, like sharing a secret that only we could ever know. Because you're my son, and my love for you will push you to do anything, she whispered, my face involuntarily growing into a smile without even realizing. Just don't look at the wall behind me. My eyes were fixed on hers, a small silver of the background visible behind her ear. My eyes slowly broke from her gaze and traveled over. She spoke again. Don't. A frantic whisper escaped her lips. My eyes snapped back as a pale shade shifted out of sight. Blinking once, I saw she was sitting back to the chair, talking as if nothing happened. Had I dozed off? I was high on pain medication. It wasn't impossible. I'm running out of time. They're only supposed to be short. These are only supposed to be short. So I'll finish up here. Mommy loves you, my little crown prince. Close your eyes and breathe with me. Again, I did as instructed and heard a distinct creaking sound from the speakers, undoubtedly her settling into her chair. I'll always be with you. So years went. Fewer milestone videos popped up. Some of them were simply mundane or not that noteworthy. Not why we're here, but the usual events. First day as a freshman, last day as a senior, prom night, and even an embarrassing one wherein a 17-year-old me had the most uncomfortable 15 minutes of being explained dating etiquette and safe sex by my long-gone mother. By the time I had reached 21, only 4 tapes remained. Grandpa had passed and Grandma was getting on, so they were given to me with the obvious instruction to not watch them until the time was right. And this part was where things take a turn. I had a breakup, bad life choices, even worse friendship choices with substances readily available, a lifetime of insecurity stemming from no parental figure. And a series of videos from your long dead mom are enough to fuck anyone up. So I grabbed a bottle, some pills, and put the next video in, planning to binge them before I took my leave. I mean, fuck it. What's the harm if I'm ending it all, right? The video flickered and cast a long shadow across my dismal apartment before the visage of my mom came into focus. It had been a couple of years since the last video, and my emotionally unstable, drunken state, I was not prepared for what I saw. Sunken eyes and slack jaw, her tongue hanging out, dropping to the bottom of her chin, thick, pungent saliva with her concave chest heaving under the weight of the oxygen machine wrapped around her face. A looming shadow with 2 bright blue orbs for eyes and jagged pillars for teeth, wrapping its arms around her. It locked eyes with me and cocked its head to the side. No, it croaked, my skin bubbling with fear and chilling my blood. I have never felt a terror like it. It felt like it knew me and saw into me. I recoiled and my cocktail for fear and horror retched up everything I'd down in 10 minutes. A torrid mixture of bile, acid, pills, and booze spread over my carpet as tears ran down my face. My stomach ached and every cell in my body screamed at me in protest. The thoughts swirling in my thick skull were that of disappointment, disgust, and repulsiveness. I felt weak, alone, and broken as I collapsed into the floor in the fetal position, sobbing. Sweetie, it's Mom. Though blurred eyes and a haze of pain, I looked at the TV, expecting some emaciated creature to lurch through. But there was my mom. She looked tired, her hair now matted to her head and exhaustion racking her bones, but beauty radiating through her as she held her hands in her lap, leaned forward, smiling. If you're watching this, then things are bad. I don't know how bad, but I can guess. Grandpa wouldn't have let you watch this if you'd gotten your heart broken or were at the age where emotions are as high as a kite and just as volatile. So I can assume that, much like me, you're in a bad place. She coughed, and I felt the need to sit up and give her my full attention. This woman, no more than 6 years my senior, frozen in time, still finding ways to command my attention with every word. It was like I was 5 again. Sweetie, I know I can't talk to you like a child anymore, so I won't. Honestly, I'd been so excited to see you grow up. Go through that phase where we bicker and argue over small things before finally settling in the longest and most beautiful phase of our family dynamic. I watched her lips quiver and eyes glaze over, my own mirroring as she shakily concluded. The one where we're best friends who always look out for each other. That broke me. Every emotion I trained myself to hide away. When kids started asking questions I couldn't answer. Situations I'd wanted my mom in. Moments I felt alone. I let it out in one volatile evening of self-healing. The words on that tape echoing in my head after it stopped playing. The road ahead will be tough without me. It's always going to be. But you're the crown prince, and you'll eventually have that throne. Survey your kingdom and know you can do anything and conquer anything. It's getting closer now, but we still have some time left. So, don't let whatever is going on beat you, nor the thing after that. The penguins didn't, did they? I'm sure Grandpa told you. But they're my favorite. Those little birds share the burden of parenthood, walk over 100 miles, and nearly starve to cultivate new life. I'd do all of that and more for you, honey. Because... She closed her eyes, and I did too. Without prompting, we said it together. I'll always be with you. It took time to get better. All things do. I would spend so many nights in withdrawal with the shakes, vomit, and staring up at a horrific beast looming over my head. Like the thing on the TV, but foggier. I'd imitate my movements and try to get closer. With every step, its eyes would glow just a bit brighter, everything else remaining shrouded in darkness, even if light passed through my curtains. I didn't know how I made it through that time of my life. One night, as it made its way to the foot of my bed, I closed my eyes and breathed on instinct, reciting my mother's mantra. I suppose in moments of crisis, we turn to our most personal coping mechanisms, and I wasn't about to go back to the bottle. When I finished, it was gone. Over the years, I completed my program. I got clean and went through therapy to cope with the grief. When I hit 26, I met the second most important woman in my life, Natalie. She knew what it was like to go through pain, to go through suffering alone, to play with the wrong demons. We fell in love, we got engaged, and eventually married. As she had been countless times before, my mom was there to congratulate us. Natalie had seen some tapes, but this was her first one that, in its own way, was directed to her. Mom was nearing the end by this point, her thin frame barely clinging to her always beautiful dresses, and her skin beginning to stretch like paper. She took great gulps of air in form of oxygen tank before talking, but somehow retained that exuberance she always had. I knew you'd find someone wonderful eventually, Nick. Penguins always find their mate for life, and you'd be no exception. She giggled through her strained coughs, turning her head slightly as if she could see Natalie. I don't know you, but I bet you're the most beautiful woman in the world. If my crown prince chose you, well, after me, of course. Another laugh, this time accompanied by tears from the two of us. There's just one more to go, so look after each other. Love well, and experience everything you can. And don't forget. Natalie gripped my hand with her left, a hand over on her bump with the right as we closed our eyes. I could hear the scratching sound more prominently now, but I kept my eyes shut, not wanting to ruin the moment. I'll always be with you. We were so excited to have a baby. Natalie had come from a big family and was eager to start expanding our own. Even though I was reluctant, I couldn't help but share in her enthusiasm when so many late nights were spent fawning over baby names, cute outfits, and lofty plans for the future on how our kid would even behave around us, determined to be cool parents. But in between all of that, my mind would cast back to those tapes of my mom. The only parent I really knew. I wanted to use them as a guidebook for my own steps. She'd been such an integral part of my life. It seemed odd to not have her in it now. Keeping the last tape separate, I rewatched the entire set one by one, reliving those moments I couldn't truly appreciate until my own journey was coming into parenthood. But when I got to the broken bone tape, I froze. Once again, she leaned into the camera and whispered, eyes full of fright and panic, "Don't look." I pushed pause on the video and took a moment. Surely I was just highly medicated at the time. There couldn't really be anything there, right? So, why was I so reluctant to move my eyes to the right to find out? Taking a breath, I moved the video frame by frame and watched the corner where her face didn't cover. That shadow. That same fucking shadow. Looming in the background, eyes burning red with fury. Don't look, don't look, don't look, don't look. I jumped. The video was skipping, stuck on the sounds of my mother's panic-stricken voice begging me not to stare.
I couldn't help it. I stared and watched this creature take confident, unnatural, and twitchy strides from the background, getting ever closer to the camera. I saw the muscles on its face twist and undulate as it pressed its cheeks into a twisted grin. The sight of rot and earth and unspeakable things in its mouth, all displaying themselves in full glory as it intonated one word that sent streams through my home before shutting off. Soon. Natalie was 8 months gone, petite and a history of prior drug abuse. They said her heart just couldn't take it. Her body gave out, and that it was a miracle our daughter survived. I took it all in, and yet none of it, as I cradled my entire universe in my arms. The second greatest woman I'd ever known, now taken from me too. Phoebe, I breathed, unable to take my eyes off her perfect little face as she slept soundly just 12 feet from her dead mother. Her name is Phoebe, and she is the crown princess. Somewhere in the corner of my eye, a shadow cast itself over Natalie's bed, right as they put the sheet over her. From that night on, there would always be noises outside our home. Always faint howling. Always a solitary spot in front of the property where no light could touch it. For a while, I forgot about the videos, forgot about everything that wasn't Phoebe. Raising her became priority number 1, and I wouldn't work any extra hours I needed to. I gave up any friendship I had and spite myself in whatever way was necessary to ensure that my perfect little girl slept soundly at night. It wasn't until Phoebe's second birthday, last week, that I finally got the courage to dig out the videos and watch the last one. How many times had I sat in a home, emotionally destroyed at a crossroads in my life, wanting to see the woman's face and hope she'd somehow have the magic words to guide me. As the picture flickered on, the logo shining up on the screen, I cast my head back with a mixture of surprise and sadness as I realized the significance of the year. I was older than her now. Hi, sweetie. I guess we finally reached the end, huh? Her voice sounded younger. I looked down and saw her standing up. No chair or wallpaper in sight. It looked like she was recording this in her bedroom. A picture of health. All things considered, her eyes red from crying but her voice unwavering, like she'd prepared these words carefully. This is technically the last video for you, but the first for me. Weird how this all works, but this is how it needs to happen. You're watching this. You've gotten your own little princess to protect. The crown prince has now become the king, and I couldn't be prouder. She beamed, but my stomach tightened at those words. Your own little princess. I breathed, my chest tightening. How did she know? I imagine you're now wondering how I know. Well, that's not the important part. What's important is if you saw what you think you saw within the videos, between the frames. There's something lurking here, Nick. Something ancient. I felt the house shudder, settling into place, no doubt, but I couldn't separate myself from the fear running through my body. It feeds on misfortune. It watches from the shadows and waits for small, tiny windows to make itself known. I don't know where it came from or what it is, but I know what it wants. A rumbling behind me, the sound of wood splintering and creaking. The unmistakable sound of tape tapping that I'd heard every time we did the mantra at the end of the video. I was shaking, but I couldn't stop watching. It wants us, Nick. We seem to be a source for it. When it finishes using us, it moves on. A long time ago, I was told that if I captured it on film, solidified it in these repeatable tapes, it would slow it down, maybe even stop it. I have no idea if it'll work, but you deserve to know that you can almost certainly see it too. Because if it doesn't stop here, if you start to see it, start to experience misfortune. My heart skipped, tripping over the stairs and narrowly missing, cracking my skull as a child, losing my first tooth, the hit and run that scratched my arm, the first broken bone, marrying and losing Natalie, my first love. Oh no. Oh God, no. I willed my body to move, to leap out of the seat and to rush to Phoebe's room. But I had to hear the rest though, screaming at my mom to tell me the solution. When your dad told me about our curse, he took me in after my father died, about how it passes from father to daughter, mother to son, and so forth. You can try to avoid it, but it always finds a way. She looks down in shame, clutching at her sleeves. Truth be told, I didn't want to get pregnant, but things have a way of happening, and I knew I couldn't give you up. She glanced behind her, something off camera scaring her into grabbing at her arms and rubbing them, shame and fear on her face. I'm so sorry, baby. I want you to know that there is power in these words, in these videos. I will do everything I can to protect you, just like I know you'll protect your child, no matter who it hurts in the process, because one last time, I just had to close my eyes. One last time, and it would all be over. I did it on instinct. It didn't matter that there were a slew of sounds altering me to an invading presence in my home, that it was rapidly approaching me. All that mattered was the mantra. I'll be here for you, always. But what I heard parroting me back was not my mother. It was guttural, inhuman, the voice that barked back the phrase, and I swear I felt its breath inches from my face. I felt my eyes unrestricted by pupils or sockets spin around, focusing on my weakest point, but I didn't waver. After a few agonizing moments, it darted away out of view, leaving only the static of the TV to keep me aware that I was, in fact, not dreaming. As soon as I knew it was safe, I ran to Phoebe's room to check in on her, convinced that she was the next in a line of long losses, convinced that some otherworldly specter had taken her from me, convinced I would be alone again. You can imagine my relief when I opened the door to find her softly sleeping, clutching her teddy bear with his own attached blankie, the same toy my mom had given me. I looked at her with the enormity of the situation overshadowing me. The realization she was the same age I was when my mom got diagnosed. The realization that soon I would be the one making a slew of videos for milestones I'd never get to see her inherit. My crown princess's kingdom of nightmares. And I don't know if this is what my mother intended, but I took those words at the end to heart. Protect your child.
no matter who it hurts in the process. The end. That was entitled My Mom Left Me a Set of Tapes to Watch After She Died. How is everyone? How are we supposed to go to the bathroom now? Scared? You're all scared? Don't be. None of you should be scared. I'll always be with you. I'm kidding. You're creeped out. I'm glad. Your back hurts, Baku. I think that's part of aging, no? I need a lot of water after that. That gave a new type of tingles. Hello, Lubo. Thank you for the posture check and hydrate, Saxy. I'm actually doing that right now. Let me greet everybody who I haven't greeted yet. Hello, Gojira. Hello, Creeper Ramen. Hello, Chocobo. Hello, Kimochi. Thank you so much for the flowers, Robot. There seems to be a theme for tonight. The first story was about a father, and the second story was about a mother. Our next story is about an uncle. But I'll tell you, Careless, you came from TikTok. Welcome. Thank you so much for dropping by. Hello, Heckley. Welcome. Tonight, I'm reading you all stories from the afterlife. Stories from other souls you've never met. Souls who've experienced certain types of phenomena, if you would call it. Hello, Copycat. How is everyone tonight? You're glad you caught my stream. I'm actually on Twitter. If you follow me on my socials, I post a weekly schedule of my streams on Twitter. You can check them out by typing in !socials or !where. You think I have a lovely voice? Thank you. You usually don't have time, Lennox. That's fine. My VODs are always up, except when they're not. Vance, we have another Vance in chat. Vancensito, welcome. Actually, I'll be right back. Mommy needs to get more water. Yes, Barsama, welcome. Good evening. Yes, I do ASMR now. I am that person now. But the types of ASMR that I do isn't exactly the same as the type of ASMR that you are accustomed to. What other stuff happens in this stream? Well, we usually do different things every time. But for tonight, I'll just be reading all of you bedtime stories. Well, like I said, I'll be back. Mama needs more water. I am back. Hello, Chris. So, our first two stories were about a father, and the second one was about a mother. The next one is about Uncle Jerry. And this one is entitled Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone. I didn't know Will could draw. I remember thinking as my friend's hand quickly moved across the page. And then I looked more closely at Will's impromptu sketch, and I immediately regretted it. I tried to unsee it. I shifted my attention to other things around me, anything at all that wasn't ink on the page. The blur of Will's hand, the beads of sweat gathering at his temples, the gentle autumn breeze creeping through the crack of the window. Don't look at the page. Just don't look at it. But I knew I had to, so I looked. It was worse than I expected. Much worse.
Will had sketched a near carbon copy of those wartime Uncle Sam posters, except not quite. The suit was there, bow tie, check, but no Uncle Sam head. Uncle Sam's body had the head of a goat. The animal flashed a welcoming, toothy smile. A hoof pointed at me, nearly coming right out of the page. But it didn't want me to join the US Army. Oh no. This goat-headed creature had something else in mind. I want your kids. Under that declaration, in slightly small letters, it read, Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone, opening soon. I had never heard of Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone before yesterday. The place, I quickly learned, played host to a significant moment in Will's childhood. And although I'd been good friends with him for 15 years, he never told me the story. But today, he'd opened up. I wasn't trying to reopen any wounds from his past. I just wanted him to tell me a story. Any story. I'd been listening to a lot of NPR and being inspired by their storytelling segments and slices of American life. I purchased some professional recording equipment and set up a makeshift studio in my house. My goal was to capture and archive the stories of my friends, relatives, really anyone who had something to say. Call it boredom. I was a widower with a 7-year-old. Besides doting on my kid, I needed something productive to fill the time. My recording area was cozy. Just a couple of microphones, a small table, a few chairs. I'd sit a few feet from my interview subjects. The intimacy would induce real honesty and emotion. That was the plan, and it worked a little too well. I never thought my storytelling experiments would go so wrong so quickly. And it wasn't just Will's story and his sketch of Uncle Sam. Human-goat hybrid thing. Before I'd interviewed Will, I heard another version of Will's events from another person involved in the Family Fun Zone incident, Will's wife, and my good friend Carolyn. Carolyn and I dated a little while in college, a stretch of time we now joke occurred in a parallel universe. We were never supposed to happen, we decided. Instead, there was some sort of a cosmic hiccup and different universes intersected for the briefest of times. Our relationship was over before it started. Caroline began dating Will. The two lived happily ever after, and the three of us had been close ever since. Caroline and Will's history predated our collective existence in college. The two met in high school together, but I never knew exactly what they'd experienced as classmates and as friends. Not until I set up my little recording studio. I interviewed Carolyn first, and Will's interview occurred the following day. Both of my friends requested I not tell the other about the contents of their respective interviews. I'm certainly not planning on it. Both interviews were long and free-ranging. I'll just transcribe the relevant portions of their stories, the stuff about relationships, and about Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone. It's important that these stories be shared in some form. This is an excerpt of Carolyn's interview. So how did you and Will meet? We went to the same schools growing up, but we weren't friends or anything like that. You know, how you kind of know everyone you go to school with, but most people are just on the periphery, I guess. That was Will. Always there, but not really. We ran with different circles. You can't pinpoint the moment you actually met for the first time? I can't. I can't remember the first meaningful interaction we had, though. I was waiting for the school paper and, God, I can't believe I actually wrote for the paper because I was a terrible, just horrible writer. And I was researching a story. It was a legend in our town, something all the kids talked about but no one could prove. Did you have any of those? I don't think so. I'd have to think about it, but I'm sure I had some. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about? One of those. Oh, my brother's friend's mechanic had this experience type thing. It was pretty famous growing up where we did. Kind of a spook story to scare the kids from staying out late at night or running around doing irresponsible things. It was this place called Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone. Gosh, I haven't thought about that place in years. What's Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone? Just saying it loud sounds so weird, right? Just completely and utterly made up. And when we got older, most of us just thought it was just made up because it was just a silly and stupid legend. So of course it would have a ridiculous name. What was the legend? It's been so long, but from what I remember, it was a children's play zone type place that existed in the late 70s or early 80s, I'm not sure. No one could pinpoint it, but the story was this guy, Jerry something. But everyone called him Uncle Jerry, inherited a piece of land out in the woods from his grandfather. He took all of his money and turned it into the fun zone. You know, slides, games, trampolines, kind of like an indoor recreational type place. But all barnyard themed, so the place looked like a red and white barn with a silo, but inside was all of his kid stuff. He built this out in the woods. That's what everyone said, but the messed up part was what happened there. Apparently, like 30 some years ago, a kid slid down the slide and just vanished into the ball pit. Like, there was no trace of him. I think he was only 4, maybe 5. I can't remember for sure. Anyway, they emptied the ball pit and everything. The only thing at the bottom was a trapdoor and a crawl space that led nowhere. It was just a dead end. No one knew why it was there, but yeah, the kid vanished, the town freaked, Jerry split, and the place was shut down. And that really happened? Every kid in town believed it. The story was that it was some sort of hellhole that sucked down small children, that it needed to be fed, like it swallowed up that kid. And if everyone went near the place, it would swallow you up too. Don't explore too far from your home or you'll stumble across Uncle Jerry's, but you get past middle school and you think it's all bullshit. Was it bullshit? You said you were writing a story about it for the newspaper, and you met Will. Yeah, so I decided to write about Uncle Jerry's, and Will heard about it. He joined the newspaper club because he wanted to help. I think he just wanted to spend time with me. But he helped me with my research. We talked to people, looked at old newspapers, spent a lot of time in those creepy library stacks. That's where Will held my hand for the first time. God, we were so young. Did you find anything? Nothing. There was no record of the place. We even talked to the police department. They had nothing. Did they know what you were talking about? Oh, yeah. Everyone had heard of Uncle Jerry's and everyone was really nice about helping us, but nothing factual existed. My article was going terribly. It was all dead ends. Was that what you expected? I don't know what I expected. I just thought it'd be a cool article. So I had a lot of interviews of people telling the stories, and I was going to write this oral history type article. But then, God, I haven't even thought about this in years. Will came to me. He said he knew where the fun zone was. He said he had directions to the place that didn't exist. Will said that it did. It was out in the woods, down some roads that weren't on their maps. How did he get those directions? It's been so long, I honestly can't remember. Did they fall out of some ancient book at the library? I think that's what happened. But he had them. Did you go there? I never told anyone this, no one. I can't believe I'm telling you right now. Will and I haven't talked about it since it happened. Wow, really? It's okay. We don't have to keep going. No, it's fine. It's just... Seriously, Caroline, I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you or ruin your marriage by making you dredge up some terrible memories. That's not what I'm trying to. It's okay. I want you to know. I want you to know. It wasn't supposed to be there. It just wasn't. What happened was Will was going to go there first to make sure it was safe. And I'd meet him there later on. And I did. I followed the directions perfectly. Down of all these forgotten dirt roads that used to be real roads. Right turn at a rock to the side of a Volkswagen. Go 3/4 of a mile and take a left to the pine tree with a downed limb. Stuff like that. All landmark stuff, but the directions were perfect. I drove what felt like forever down this bumpy road, and it just ended. Nowhere else to go. And there was Will, standing at the side of the road next to his car, hands jammed in his pockets. And he had this look in his eye. He just looked different. It's almost like after that night there were two Wills. The first Will, who had worked on the story, helped me, reached and held my hand at the library. He was so sweet, just so shy, tender, innocent. But after that night, he changed forever, like he never looked at me the same way again. And we've been married now for 9 years and together since junior year of college, so 13 years? And he's never looked at me the way he looked at me in the basement of the library back in high school. It was that night at the fun zone that changed him. I know it. It was that night. Carolyn, have you ever thought about us? Like, what if our parallel universe had fully intersected forever with the real one? And we were together? I haven't looked. I think I should stop recording. Please don't. It's just... me and Will. 9 years, no kids, no babies. He just doesn't look at me like he's supposed to. He's supposed to give me a baby and we're supposed to be living this love story, but something went wrong. And it all started that night. What happened? On that night, I mean. I pulled off to the side of this dirt road that no one had driven on in probably decades. And, like I said, Will just seemed so different. I asked him if he'd found it, and he said it was there. Uncle Jerry's family fun zone was there. Will grabbed 2 flashlights from his car. And we followed a path through some brush, then it kind of emerged before us, nestled in trees, the barn, the silo, everything. It was so strange. It was almost like it materialized, if that makes sense. It was dark, so yeah, I know what you mean. And there was this picket fence around the place, and each board was painted either yellow, green, or a light purple. It held up better than it should have. The paint should have been completely peeled off, or maybe the whole thing should have fallen down. But it was in good shape. Did you go inside? I mean, we came all the way, right? The main entrance was huge. A wooden double door. Probably 15 feet high, and above it was this sign. Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone, with this picture of a cartoon farmer with a piece of straw hanging from his mouth. And the sign had been vandalized. Someone had spray painted X's over the farmer's eyes, and nearly every letter had been scribbled out. Everything except for fun. But the F was turned into an R, and an exclamation point was added. So it just read run. So we weren't the first people that had been there. And I remember thinking, I don't know if this makes me feel better or worse. So who went in first? Will did. He pushed open the door, and it creaked the whole time. I was nervous someone would hear it, but we were out in the middle of nowhere. You know, it was kind of dumb. Will raised his flashlight and jumped backwards into me. We were staring at this giant goat statue made out of fiberglass. Had to have been 7 feet tall. It was standing on its hind legs, with its other front legs reaching out like it was hugging something invisible. I guess it was a photo op, you know. Stand inside it, take your picture. And they were everywhere. What was everywhere? Fiberglass farm animals. Goats, sheep, cows, pigs, all standing on 2 legs. All of their front legs extended, like they were scattered around the whole place, almost like soldiers keeping watch. Most of them were covered with some black shoot substance. I ran my hand across one of the sheep. The suit was probably a half an inch thick. I still remember it trickling through my fingers. It was wet, almost gooey. I honestly don't know what it was. What else was inside? Slides. They were everywhere. Slides, jungle gyms, swinging bridges, a basketball court. We crept around for I don't know how long, just not believing it was real. It was just so dark and utterly silent. We got turned around so many times, it was like we were going deeper and deeper. And I know this doesn't make sense, but it felt like we walked longer than we should have. Like the place was bigger on the inside than it looked on the outside. At one point, I remember looking back at Will and saying, "It's like a maze in here." And right at that moment, we almost ran into a sign that said, "Uncle Jerry's Amazing Cornstalk Maze." We were right at the entrance to a maze, but it wasn't made out of corn. The walls were wooden with corn stalks painted on them, and there was no way we were going in there, not a chance. Did you find the ball pit? We did. It was at the bottom of the tallest and widest slide in the whole place, right in the center of the barn. And the pit was just massive. Had to have been 40 feet wide and maybe 6 feet deep. But it was empty. No plastic balls. Just a giant barren pit. And there was a ladder going down into it. And from where we were standing, we saw a hatch. Will looked at me and he kind of shrugged and said, "This is why we're here, right?" So we climbed down, and as we walked towards the hatch, our feet echoed. It was a different kind of echo. Like it died quickly, too quickly, almost like something was sucking away the noise. I can't believe you guys did this. I guess it was adrenaline. Our flashlights were directly on the hatch, and it had one of those round steel rings. No lock. We stared at it for a while without saying anything. Almost like we were expecting it to start pulsating or to pop open. But we wanted to know what was inside. We had to know. So we decided to do it together. We grabbed the steel ring with both hands and pulled it up. I thought I'd be greeted by the bones of the dead kid, but there was only the smell that rushed us. It was very cold and crisp, with a tiny whiff of sulfur. We hopped right in, and I reluctantly followed. The stories were all true. It was a crawl space to nowhere. We crouched down and crawled about 20 feet, and the tunnel just ended. Nothing but a smooth steel wall. We ran our hands across it. Maybe we'd find the secret handle or trigger or a button or something, but there was nothing. And then we heard the noises from above. Something had jumped into the pit, because the first thing we heard was this single, reverberating thud. It was unmistakable. And then the footsteps directly above us, walking towards the hatch. We killed our flashlights and pressed our backs into the steel. Will put his arm around me and covered my mouth, and I did the same to him. My legs started trembling and bouncing on the floor, and Will grabbed it, steadying it. We listened as the footsteps got closer to the hatch, and then they just stopped. And I wanted to look down the tunnel. I did, but I didn't want whatever was there to see the whites of my eyes, because I was terrified it would give me away. But I felt its presence across the tunnel. I knew it was there. I felt it leaning down and staring at us. I'm not sure what. I even heard it breathing softly. Did it say anything? No. It just watched us for a while, and I never opened my eyes. The next thing I remember is the hatch slamming shut, and both Will and I jumping and hitting our heads on the crawl space ceiling. We stayed there silent for, it had to be an hour. We eventually worked up the courage to crawl to the other end in the pitch black, and I was praying, just praying that this thing or person or whatever wasn't inside the crawl space with us. We were too scared to even turn on our flashlights. Every inch we crawled, I thought, this is it. I'm going to reach out and feel something warm and snarling. But we made it to the end, and we slowly raised the hatch. Thank God it hadn't locked us inside. We climbed out and ran. Just ran. I don't even remember my legs moving beneath me. I remember it being... I was in the crawl space. Now I'm outside. Now I'm at the car. Just like that. We were safe. Did you tell anyone about this? Did you write the article? Will followed me to my house. We promised each other to never talk about it ever again. We were done. No article. Nothing. Why not? I think we stumbled across something we were never meant to see. And something knew we were there. And I think it just let us off with a warning. We didn't want to make it mad. We were given a second chance. You kept calling it. Is there a reason for that? Just a hunch. Just the sounds it made when it walked. The vibe it gave off. It didn't feel human. I honestly can't believe you haven't talked about this since high school. You or Will haven't brought it up? Not once? Will is... I love Will, but it changed him. It changed me. How long has it been since Grace died? 15 months. And you two didn't have secrets or things you didn't talk about? We talked about everything, at least for my part, and I'm sure she wasn't keeping anything from me. What's that like? to have a marriage like that and to have a child to love. I think what we had was rare, and Tyler is my world. He is my everything.
Do you ever think?
I turned off the recording. Carolyn was traveling down a road that I had no interest in going. She left shortly after, making me promise to not share anything with Will. I gave her my word. At one point, I dropped the digital recording of her interview in the trash icon and hovered over the empty button for a few seconds. I couldn't do it. I dragged it back to a folder on my desktop. Will came by the next day for his interview. It began plainly enough. The first 20 minutes focused on his grade school years, his baseball playing days in college, and his love for 80s action movies. Nothing relevant, nothing deep. That quickly changed. The interview direction veered towards love and marriage. I tried to avoid it, but it came up organically. Will hesitated, contemplating. I'd hoped we'd detour right around it, but he looked at me sharply in the eyes and said, "Have you ever heard of Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone?" I lied, and I told him that I hadn't. He grabbed a sheet of paper from my desk and sketched out the Uncle Sam type flyer that cursed children's fun zone. And this was the beginning of his interview. I was sitting in class, I think it was Spanish, and I took over. And this beautiful girl in the row next to me is furiously scribbling in her notebook. And she's drawing this. Will holds up the sheet of paper. I can't explain it, but I was drawn to it. There was something about it, so I stopped her after class and I asked her, "What's Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone?" Because I'd never heard of the damn place. Was it a place in town? That's the thing. It apparently was some kids' play area type place in the 1970s, and some little kid drowned in a ball pit, if that makes sense. Carolyn told me the whole story, saying it was the most famous legend in our town, and she was writing a newspaper story about it. But I'd never heard of it. I asked all my friends, my parents, my teachers, and I always got the same response. "What are you talking about?" And that made me more curious. Is this beautiful girl putting me on, or does she have a wild imagination? Because according to Carolyn, this legend was as famous as Bigfoot or the Loch Ness monster or whatever. Are you sure you were asking the right people? Google it. You'll find absolutely zero about Uncle Jerry's Family Fun Zone. As if a legend is that famous, wouldn't it have some presence on the internet nowadays? Anything at all? Zero results. That's pretty incredible. And back then, it wasn't just people I knew. I joined the newspaper club, mainly out of this incredible fascination to find out more about this girl and why she was so obsessed with this legend that didn't exist. And we even interviewed dozens of people for the story. Historians, cops, librarians. We got a lot of strange looks. No one had ever heard of Uncle Jerry's, which only made me more curious. Did you guys get together? I know you started dating in college. I didn't know you had a history. Not really. I mean, almost. Caroline had this pull on me that was hard to explain. We were spending a lot of time together and she was gorgeous and funny and motivated. Man, just motivated to find out more about this Uncle Jerry's place. And I liked it. Even when I thought she was maybe a little crazy, I liked it. But she wasn't crazy. So it was real? Here's the thing. We had no clues or leads, and I was just hoping she'd give up. You know, drop the whole thing and we can start dating and doing normal teenage things or whatever. But one night, and shit, I haven't thought about this in forever. I was up late cramming for a test, and I see this bundled up old guy walking down my street, just kind of putzing along. And the guy looks like he's 200 years old. And he stops at the end of my driveway, reaches into his overcoat, pulls something out, and slips it into my mailbox. And I was like, what the hell is this? I stand up, and he snaps his head and looks right at me. It was freaky, just freaky. I drove down on the floor and don't have the balls to look outside another 10 minutes. By that point, he was gone. What did he put in the mailbox? I found out in the morning. It was directions, scribbled on a napkin. Weird ass directions, like drive down this dirt road and look for the tallest tree, then turn right type directions. I immediately knew it had something to do with Uncle Jerry's. I just knew it. Did you tell Carolyn? Here's the thing, and this will sound terrible, and I can't believe I'm telling someone, but here's what happened. This Uncle Jerry's thing had been going on for weeks, and I know I said I liked the fact that Carolyn was obsessive over it, but things turned weird quick. She kept coming over to my house to hang out, but she didn't seem too interested in me. She was more interested in my brother, who was 2 at the time. And God, it was hard to explain. It wasn't like a normal, I like playing with your brother type thing. It was creepy. The way she looked at him, it was almost like she needed him for something. That she was going to snatch him. Like, we'd come home one day and David would be gone. And it was because Carolyn took him. Wow, I don't expect you to understand any of this. It doesn't make any sense. But I felt it. I'm telling you, it was real. In my heart, I had this hideous feeling it was all related to this Uncle Jerry's family fun zone obsession. I thought Carolyn was looking for this place and was going to offer up my brother as some form of a sacrifice. Just saying it sounds so messed up. You probably think I'm yanking your chain. I mean, this is my wife we're talking about here. This is Carolyn. It's fine. I know you don't sound like you're lying. I wouldn't. Not about this. Did you tell anyone? No. They'd probably think I was the crazy one. The whole thing was insane beyond belief. But I had to know what she was up to. So here's what I did. I told Carolyn I'd found directions to Uncle Jerry's. Told her that they had been folded up in some library book about the town's history or something. I gave her directions to the place and I told her I'd check it out first. But here's the thing. I gave her the wrong directions. What do you mean? I made them up. I wrote down a bunch of gibberish. They led miles outside of town in the opposite direction. And I followed my directions, the ones the old man left me. And they led me right to it. It was real. This Uncle Jerry's place. It was real, man. It made no sense. And then Carolyn showed up. With the wrong directions? I'll never forget it. Seeing her car pull up, she should have been 40 miles away. But here she was. And that's when I knew. There was something wrong with her. Something wrong about that old man. Something wrong about that place. It was like Carolyn was magnetically drawn to it. Uncle Jerry's family fun zone. Like, it exists because she believes it exists. I decided at that moment that there was some form of evil forces in the world I would never understand. Never. And Carolyn was wrapped up in it. How was the place real? Like I said, it didn't make any sense. Nothing did. We even explored the place for a while. And it was... Christ. It feels like I'm going back there right now. And I never wanted to go back, never. That mushy smell. Those
animals that towered over us like monsters. It's just.
Will, why don't we end this? I can.
No. Just a little more. There's some things that you should know. I've never seen Carolyn so excited. Still haven't. I swear she was bouncing around that place. Wanted to explore every inch. She even pulled me into some horrifying corn maze I thought we'd never get out of. And then we found it. We found the place where that kid had disappeared. Carolyn pulled open his hatch in this enormous, empty ball pit, and we wiggled through this crawl space that dead-ended. And then we heard something. Someone else was inside the barn. We heard its footsteps above us, and it was stomping around. I thought maybe it was the old man, because who else would know we'd be here? Was it the old man? It wasn't. No way. We were huddled up at the end of the crawl space, and my legs were shaking so bad I thought they would spring free from my body. Carolyn held them down for me. She was so calm, just so calm. The hatch opened, and in the dark I saw this figure kind of lean down. It definitely wasn't the old man. It was too skinny. It couldn't have been a person, just couldn't. So we stared at it from across the crawl space, and at one point, I turned to look at Carolyn. She was watching this thing with this little grin on her face, and that thing kept right on looking and breathing, and then all of a sudden, it kind of sniffed the air, like it was smelling us. And the voice, God, I'll never forget it. It was this voice that was deep and raspy and terrible at the same time. It said, "Not young enough." Then it slammed down the hatch and it was gone. We waited a while, and when we thought it was safe, we ran back to our cars. Will, if I thought that we'd talk about this, I wouldn't have asked you to do this. I mean it. I never intended for it to be like this. It's fine. It's just someone needed to know. I'm glad it's you. If I can ask, and if you don't want to answer, that's totally fine. Why are you with her? Why are you married to Carolyn? Well, because someone had to marry her, and it had to be me. Does that make sense? I know what happened at that place. I know that there's evil things in this world that have grabbed hold of her, but she's better. She never wrote that article, never talked about Uncle Jerry's family fun zone since then. I'm not even sure if she even remembers it. Maybe the evil is gone. It could be gone forever. But I'm always waiting for it to come back. And that's why I'll tell you this. But this goes to the grave, yeah? I nodded. She wants to have kids. Carolyn wants to have a baby. But it won't be with me. I got a vasectomy years ago back in college, actually. I won't give her a baby. Not after everything that I know. But now she wants one, more than anything. She'll find out. If you guys do fertility, the doctors will find out. I know, man, I know. What will you do then? I don't know. I don't know. My original hunch about my interview experiment was correct. There was just something about the microphones and tight space that elicits honesty. What I experienced with Carolyn and Will was the rarest forms of honesty. An honesty I hope to never, ever experience again. I wanted to rid myself of the entire situation. Even having the audio files just felt wrong. Like I was allowing evil to fester. But then I remembered what Will told me. Someone has to know.
So I spent hours transcribing their interviews, dumped the text file on a USB drive, and tossed it into a box in my closet. I deleted the audio files from my computer and then put my microphones and recorders out to the curb. It just wasn't worth it. But the purging didn't cure me. I was haunted by Will and Carolyn's stories. And it wasn't just the horrific situations they found themselves in as high schoolers. It was the secrets and lies that they've lived ever since. Will and Carolyn came over for dinner a few weeks after the interviews, and it was like nothing was wrong. We drank, we laughed. I watched Will touch the small of Carolyn's back and Carolyn gently caresses Will's elbow. It seemed so frighteningly normal, but I knew what they were living with, and it terrified me. The next day, the doorbell rang. It was Carolyn. She'd left her sweater at my place and was here to pick it up. It was my first time being alone with her since the interview. I was worried she'd bring up Uncle Gary's family fun zone, or wanting to have a baby, or she'd again gently broach to the topic of me and her, or what could have been, or what could be. I just wasn't sure. I retrieved the sweater from the kitchen and walked her to the front door. I tried to read what was going on between her eyes, and I looked for a flicker of that evil that Will said grabbed a hold of her all those years. I didn't see it. I just saw a lonely, sad woman who wanted more out of life than what she was given. We reached the front door, and Carolyn looked over towards my living room. Tyler lay nestled into the cushions, lost inside the pages of a fantasy book. Carolyn smiled longingly at my boy and said to no one in particular, "Not young enough." The end. How do you like that one?
Hello, Chim Chow. Thank you for the flower. And thank you so much for the hydrate and posture check. Welcome, kitten. Yes. I've read you all 3 stories tonight. And sadly, I have to go. It's 11 p.m. and I have an early day tomorrow. You like creepy things, Plumhood. So do I. I actually enjoyed reading these stories to you all. Maybe we can do this regularly. Are you nervous, Saxy? Are you worried that you might not be alone? This was cool. Thank you, Chocobo. You like reading Junji Ito late in the night? Oh yes, Junji Ito has some really nice work. It's not that you're scared of being alone. You're afraid that someone's with you. Saxy, haven't you been listening? I will always be with you. Anyway, I'm sorry to cut this so short. And And I am sorry for starting stream late, but I have to go. I hope all of you have a good night. Sweet dreams, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Rest in peace. Goodbye.